Good, so then let's go ahead and get started and convene the March the 14th meeting of the Camino Real Mobility Authority. We do have a quorum, and it is about 9:01. Who's up, Raymond? Public comments?
No, we don't have anyone.
Good. Item number 2, adoption of the minutes of the CRRMA board meeting of February the 8th, 2012. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
So moved. Second.
Moved, second. Further comment? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Same sign. It carries. Thank you. Item number 4, presentation, discussion, and action to accept the FY 2011 annual audit as per recommendation of the Finance Committee meeting. Who's up?
Raymond Tejas, the Executive Director of the Camino Real RMA. Today we have with us Janet Pacheco-Morton, who is with our auditing firm, and she presented to our Finance Committee meeting yesterday on the fiscal year 2011 annual audit. And she's here with us today to provide a presentation as well. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Pacheco-Morton.
Thank you, Raymond. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone today?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. We're going to start off with the most exciting part of the meeting. I'm sure that's the audit of the RMA. The results for fiscal year ended August 31st, 2011. And on today's agenda, we've got required communications, and per our auditing standards, which are the rules that we follow as auditors, there is specific information that we are required to communicate to the governing body of any entity that we audit. So we'll go over those communications today. We'll also go over the opinions on the audit, and we issued 2 opinions, one over the financial statement portion of the audit, which includes all of the financial information in the audit report, as well as all of the disclosures related to that financial information. We also issued a second opinion over your single audit, and what a single audit is a compliance audit over your federal grants and state grants. We'll review any findings, and we did have one this year. And we'll also do a brief financial analysis comparing this year's financial results with prior year. And we do have some remaining items for audit completion. They are minor, and I'll go over those procedures as well. As far as required communications, one of the things that we are required to communicate to the governing body is whether or not there were any significant changes to the accounting policies of the RMA, and there were none in the current year. Everything in the financial statements is consistent with prior years. Significant accounting estimates within the financial statements is another item we have to disclose. For the RMA, there are very few estimates, management estimates, and a common estimate is typically the allowance for doubtful accounts related to receivables that are expected to be uncollectible. Management makes that estimate. The closest thing we have to an estimate within the RMA financial statements is with regards to the amortization of bond premiums, discounts, and issuance costs, and management has opted to use the life of the bonds in that calculation to amortize at an annual rate. Some other points of interest is whether we had any disagreements with management, and I'm happy to say that we had none during the course of our audit. In fact, Raymond was very helpful in giving us all of the information necessary to complete our audit in a timely fashion, so I'm very happy about that. We did not consult with other independent auditors, and except for reviewing prior year audit work papers, because another audit firm did conduct last year's audit, and we are not aware that the RMA sought input from any other independent auditor, for instance, to get a second opinion over an accounting issue.
Ms. Pacheco?
Yes.
I think we're a little bit off on the presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I am on 3. How do I change this? There we go. So I change it myself.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And we did not encounter any difficulties in performing the audit. One of the significant disclosures that we have to make to governing bodies is whether or not we made any significant adjustments to the general ledger of the organization. And the general ledger is the official book of record that contains all of the financial information for the organization. We did have some significant adjustments to the general ledger of the RMA, and I've organized them into separate buckets. The first bucket, and I won't go into detail over each journal entry, I'll just give you a summary of each, but I provided each journal entry here for you. The first group is with regards to unrecorded transactions. Now, the City of El Paso does maintain the general ledger for the RMA, and they do so for all of the funds for which they are fiscally responsible over. They are the fiscal agent for the RMA. This does not include all of the transactions related to the bonded debt. The bonded debt, these funds are held in trust at Wells Fargo Bank, and they do provide monthly statements to Raymond that he does review on a monthly basis, but they are not recorded onto the official book of record, onto the general ledger. So the majority of these unrecorded transactions have to do with bonded debt transactions. The net effect of all of these transactions, which are on this page and page 5, is a $191 million decrease to your net assets, or your equity balance, so to speak. The next group of adjustments has to do with accrual entries, and these are typical entries that occur during the course of an audit. And these are entries to record, for instance, amounts that were drawn from Texas Department of Transportation prior to August 31st, which is your fiscal year end, but these funds were not received until after year end. So we posted a receivable and then revenue for the current year for those funds. On the flip side, we also recorded expenditures that were incurred prior to year end and not paid out until after year end. And that's what these group of entries are doing. The next group of entries are reclassification entries, and these are also typical during the course of an audit. These are reclassifying amounts within your general ledger that were recorded, but were recorded to, we reclassified the information for financial statement presentation purposes. And they had no effect on your bottom line. The next item is past adjustments. And what a past adjustment is an adjustment that came to our attention. It would have been a correction of an error or something that was not previously recorded on your general ledger. And these amounts do not rise to the level of being material to your financial statements. So we did not post these adjustments. It's an $8,000 adjustment for legal expenses payable at year end. But we are required to disclose this information to you. Now, the most significant outcome of an audit are the auditor's opinions. And I'm happy to say that we issued an unqualified opinion over the financial statement audit piece. And what an unqualified opinion is the best opinion you can receive from an audit. It represents a clean opinion over your financial statements. So what we're saying is your financial statements are materially stated after the adjustments that we made. And they are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, which means that all of the required disclosures are in your financial statements as well. The second opinion is over your single audit, and this is the compliance audit over your federal and state grants. And again, we issued an unqualified opinion, which is a clean opinion, the best opinion you can obtain from an audit. Before I go over the one finding that we have, I'd just like to briefly cover the different levels of findings. A material weakness is the most severe level of a finding, and it involves an audit where there were errors discovered or there were significant or material adjustments made to the general ledger to get it to a point where it was materially stated. And that's what we have in this finding. And this finding is with regards to the unrecorded activity. The next two levels, we don't have any in these categories, but there is significant deficiency, which is somewhat less severe than a material weakness, but could lead to a material misstatement. And then there's a control deficiency, which could lead to some type of misstatement, not necessarily material. A finding 2012-01 has to do with all of the unrecorded financial activity, primarily related to the bonded debt transactions that I discussed earlier. And again, the net effect of these adjustments on the financial statements was a decrease in your net asset balance of $191 million. And again, your net asset balance is your equity in essence. I won't go over word for word on the finding, but I do want to cover our recommendation. And our recommendation is we recommend that the RMA does establish procedures and implement these procedures to ensure that all of the financial activity for the organization is included on the general ledger. I do want to point out that Raymond does a great job of maintaining subsidiary schedules, and he does track the information very closely, and this enabled us to record all of these transactions and become comfortable with those balances. However, I mentioned this to Raymond yesterday, if he gets hit by a bus today, it will be very difficult for somebody to step in and gather all the information and accumulate it into the general ledger system. One of the avenues that we discussed for doing this, for establishing such procedures and implementing such procedures, is perhaps hiring an external accountant to do some monthly bookkeeping, or going back to the city of El Paso and asking for additional assistance in incorporating the unrecorded activity onto the general ledger. I just want to provide some additional information on the single audit. The RMA is currently classified as a high-risk auditee, and this is not because we have any issues or findings related to the single audit. It is because the RMA has only received federal funds for 2 years. The first 2 years that any entity receives federal funds, they are considered high risk, which means that the auditors have to test at a much more detailed level. Next year, this high-risk auditee classification should go away, and RMA will be considered a low-risk auditee. We did test the two federal programs, 20.205, which is with regards to the ARA funding, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act funding, and also the 2205, that's the non-ARA piece of that funding. Total federal expenditures were $27.2 million, and total state expenditures were $78,000 for the year. I'll do a brief financial analysis. The first thing I'd like to start with is the assets. As you can see, there was a significant increase in cash and cash equivalents, as well as intergovernmental receivables. The primary reason for the increase in the cash and cash equivalents is the receipt of loan proceeds from the Texas Department of Transportation. These are related to the State Infrastructure Bank loan of $30 million. There were some expenditures against that, so the increase is not exactly the $30 million. We also had intergovernmental receivables related to the Americas Project, and most of these are from the Texas Department of Transportation as well. In total, assets were $60.3 million for the year. In liabilities, we did have a significant increase in the accounts payable, even though they're much lower than the other categories. The accounts payable increase is primarily due to construction amounts for projects, ongoing projects that were expended during the year but were not paid out as of August 31st. Bonds and accrued interest did decrease slightly. This is not due to any principal payments. Principal payments on the bonded debt don't begin till fiscal year 2012. This is primarily related to amortization of bond premium related to the bond, which is a non-cash transaction, but it's required under governmental accounting standards. There was an increase in loans and notes, and again, this is due to the $30 million state infrastructure bank loan. And then we had an increase in other liabilities, and the majority of this is retainage payable of $1 million regarding the spur project that happened, that was completed during the year. This is your net asset balance. As you can see, as of the end of 2010, we had a deficit of $223 million. And in 2011, that deficit increased to $229 million. What this represents is your equity balance after taking all of the current year activity into consideration. Now, typically, this having a deficit net asset balance is a problem, and it may be alarming to people who look at your financial statements initially. However, I do want to point out that the deficit is expected to be eliminated through future payments from the Texas Department of Transportation related to the Spur 601 pass-through toll agreement. So that is expected to reverse. We also had some significant changes in revenues and expenses. Operating revenues increased significantly as well as operating expenses. And I'll go through those in detail in just a few minutes. Non-operating revenues decreased, and this is having to do with interest earned on cash balances. Now, your average cash balance did decrease due to the spending of a lot of your bonded debt. Non-operating expenses of $11 million stayed basically the same from last year to this year, and these are interest payments on the bonded debt. Operating revenues primarily consisted of the TxDOT federal grants, and as you can see, we had a really large increase from $1 million in the prior year to $27 million in the current year. The next largest item is pass-through toll agreement revenue, went from $4.2 million to $21.6 million, increasing your total revenue to $49 million as opposed to $6.1 million in the prior year. Operating expenses. The other operating expenses consist of payroll costs, other professional services such as legal services and financial advisory services, travel and per diem, anything administratively required to operate the business. Construction costs did decrease from $63 to $43 million, and this is primarily due to the Spur project being completed in the activities in the prior year, and those activities reduced significantly in the current year, but the Americas project did take off in this year, in fiscal year 2011. Excuse me. We do have some additional procedures to complete the audit. They are not significant. The audit is about 99.9% complete. This is a very small portion. We do have an internal quality review process that the financial information and audit work papers are currently undergoing. We will provide a management representation letter to Raymond, and this letter just tells us that he has provided all of the necessary information to conduct our audit and has not withheld any information. And we'll also be preparing the U.S. Federal Clearinghouse data collection form, and this is basically a summary report to the federal government over your single audit and the results on your single audit. And finally, we will be providing signed and dated reports to the RMA. We expect these procedures to be done fairly quickly. Hopefully, the goal is next week.
Raymond?
So with that, I should mention that this presentation was provided to the Finance Committee. In fact, the Finance Committee then went through the draft audit report, several sections of it, to discuss various minor revisions that were being made to it. It came out of the Finance Committee with a recommendation that this full board adopt the financial report for fiscal year 2011. And with that, then I would ask the Finance Committee Chair, Mr. Marcus, to speak to the Finance Committee meeting.
Thank you, Raymond. The Finance Committee actually came out with a recommendation that the whole board adopt the final 2011 audit report, subject to a few typographical and wording changes, and that's what we're bringing to the board today, is that recommendation. So,
Okay. And actually, as per our bylaws, since it's a recommendation from the committee, that all we need to do is act on. We don't really need a second on it, if I recall correctly.
No, you do. You require a motion and a second.
So, motion has been made. Second?
So moved?
Second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Janet.
I should mention for the record, just touch briefly on the finding. The finding raised an issue that we hadn't really dealt with before, and the prior auditor hadn't raised any issues with it. And really, when you look at what the finding relates to, and Ms. Pacheco, please correct me if I'm misstating any of this, but finding really relates to the fact that the City of El Paso acts as a fiscal agent for the RMA, and it manages each of its day-to-day activities. However, we have a trustee that manages the state's First 601 funds, and we generally keep different records for those two transactions. What the finding really says is those ought to be all collected in one central location in the event that I'm hit by a bus. So I think it makes sense. So I think that we need to do that. So what I'm proposing and what I will be doing over these next few weeks is bringing on a local CPA firm that could assist with compiling all the transactions that have happened throughout the SPUR project and ensuring that those are recorded in the general ledger that the city maintains for us. I think it's a good idea, and I think we ought to do it. So I'll be taking care of that. Beyond that, we'll be looking at the city as well to see if they can assist with some additional in-kind services related to invoice processing and some additional aspects. So I think we're looking at doing a couple of things. I think the RMA is growing rapidly. The financial transactions that we have are steadily increasing, and I think we've got an exciting year ahead of us. So I think these are all good steps exhibiting our growth. So I think they're necessary steps as well. So anyhow, I just wanted to mention those two things.
And that's obviously a recommendation of the Finance Committee, or that's obviously.
It came with a recommendation from the Finance Committee, but also, do we need a motion to give Raymond the opportunity to go do this?
Not at this time, because he's just going to be vetting the process. I think when he's ready to make a recommendation, if it's over his threshold, because remember, he's authorized to spend up to so much money, so if it's under the threshold, and I would anticipate it will be, it won't need any board action.
Right, but I will provide information to the
Right,
board.
you can give us
as we
FYI purposes only.
Absolutely.
So now, okay.
Yes, I will.
Not a problem. Any further discussion on item number 4? Okay, hearing none. Item number 5, discussion and action of board resolution authorizing the staff to finalize, print, and distribute the CRRMA's 2011 annual report, including the filing of the report with the City of El Paso. Raymond?
Okay, by statute, all regional mobility authorities throughout the state of Texas are required to provide an annual report to, in our case, the City of El Paso. And that annual report is required by that same statute to include 4 separate avenues. The first is that we need to identify any revenue bond issuances that are anticipated in the coming year. We also have to identify the financial condition of the Regional Mobility Authority. We have to provide project schedules. And lastly, we have to provide the status of our performance under our most recent strategic plan. So what you have in your backup is the annual report. I'm sorry, I'm a little backwards. So what you have in front of you, what you should have, is the annual report. Do you all have your copies of the annual report?
I don't think they're in it, are they?
You distribute them to us via email.
Yeah, currently, we don't have them currently. We've seen them, but we don't have them in our packet at this point.
Okay.
Sent to us.
Right, they were provided over the weekend, and I apologize. I meant to provide hard copies to you today, and I apparently didn't do that, so I apologize for that. However, So the annual report is required by statute. This annual report covers all 4 areas. What we do is the annual report, the text, the concept is provided to you all as it was provided to you for this meeting. The annual report is adopted by the board, and then you also authorize me to submit that report to the city of El Paso. And beyond that, then we also produce a glossy hardcover copy that is provided to the public. And then the final step is that we provide that annual report to the city council. So we intend to do all those again this year. As I didn't provide a hard copy, I leave it in your hands in terms of whether you want to postpone this or if you want to move forward.
I don't think so, but what's the pleasure of the board? We've seen it.
I've seen it, and I'm fine with it. It's up to the rest of the board.
Okay.
If that's okay. But it will also post it on the website, right?
Absolutely, we always do. Once it's finally published in the hard copy form, then we'll add it to our website. We produce usually between 200 and 300 copies. We provide that to the MPO board. We provide it to the city, to the county, to all the regional transportation agencies, and then we also provide it to the public, and then note to the public through our email system through our email list that we have it online.
All right, we'll entertain a motion to take action on the item as presented, number 5.
So moved.
Second, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, done. Thank you. Item number 6, discussion and action on a board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute and implement change order number 002 for the design and construction of a sidewalk within the I-10 at Loop 375 or the Americas Interchange Project. Raymond?
All right, this item I know you do have backup.
Yes.
All right, good. The Americas Interchange, as you know, includes the 3 main direct connectors, but it also includes various other related mobility enhancements around the area. One of the issues that arose as we were moving forward with our design build team, which is Americas Gateway Builders, was the question of a sidewalk on the northbound frontage road of Loop 375. There was an existing sidewalk that had to be removed to make way for an exit, a driveway basically, for a local business. The Americas Gateway Builders did not believe that they needed to replace that sidewalk. We felt that it was necessary to replace it. And we went back and forth on it for some time. In the end, when we all sat down and went through the estimates and figured out how much this thing would cost, we realized that it would actually be less expensive, more efficient and expedient for all of us if we went ahead and constructed, designed, and built the sidewalk and split the cost. So what you see before you is change order number 2 is the resolution of that potential dispute. By doing this, what we're doing is really, we're saving time, we're saving money. Within the Comprehensive Development Agreement, we have a dispute resolution process that it's fairly onerous, and it would have incurred significant amounts of time and money for both of our teams. So what you see again before you is a resolution of a potential dispute, and I recommend approval.
Right, but we thought it was a good compromise, for $21,000 to try and go through the resolution process. Raymond stated it would have been a little contentious and costly and even timely. So the chair recommended that we go forward with this $21,250 as a compromise. Questions?
I do have a question. I mean, I think it's a good compromise, but why did it even get to this level? Why is it even a dispute if there was a need for a sidewalk?
The dispute is whether or not there is a need for the sidewalk. The dispute really falls to the question of whether or not the removal of the existing sidewalk requires the replacement of that same sidewalk. And AGB contends that it's not required. We disagree.
But we did, and we wanted it in there. So that's where they could have held on and said, no, you will if you want it. It's yours, full amount. And so we opted to instead compromise on the
And through the dispute resolution process, it essentially, you go before a board and you make your argument, they make their argument, there's rebuttals in the whole process. Once the end result, then the board determines who's right and who's wrong. So either we would have paid the full amount.
No, yeah, I understand that there was a dispute, but I just don't understand their point of view. Why would they say that there wasn't a need to replace the sidewalk? I guess is my
There,
my question.
and I can't answer it because we never agreed with it. But that, in essence, they were saying that their attorneys concluded that it was not a requirement by either the contract or state or federal law that they replace the
The
sidewalk.
original work order,
Right.
in their opinion, it wasn't included,
Right.
and so.
And this isn't common. This really hasn't come up before where we have
No, it is not.
a problem with
No,
replacing sidewalks and there's a dispute.
That's correct. This is the only one that I'm aware of.
And when in doubt, blame Tech Dot. Just kidding, just kidding. Anyway, any further discussion or concerns? Hearing none, do we entertain a motion to approve the compromise as presented in agenda item number 6?
I think you had a motion.
Oh, you did? Motion? Second by David. Further discussion, Rosario?
No.
Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Done. Carries. Thank you. All right, number 7, discussion and action on board resolution authorizing the executive director to execute work order authorization number 11 with Atkins North America, Inc. as the CRRMA's general engineering consultant as it relates to the Loop 375, parentheses, Northeast Mainline Extension Project. Raymond.
As you will recall, last month, this board approved the execution of a project development agreement between the RMA and TxDOT that would allow the RMA to provide additional funding for the completion of the Trans Mountain Northeast project. What we didn't have at the time was the work authorization that actually directed our general engineering consultant to go out and do the oversight work for us. So that's what you have before you today. The reason why we didn't have it ready last month was that the project development agreement was being negotiated pretty much up until the morning of the meeting for last month. And because that's the case, the scope was not complete at that time, so we didn't have, the general engineering consultant didn't have the ability to draft their own scope. So again, what you see before you then is the work authorization that will allow our general engineering consultant to provide the oversight services in relation to the Trans Mountain Northeast project that is being pursued by TxDOT. The RMA is providing partial funding for that project, so related to that partial funding comes the oversight requirement, which the GEC will provide. As a reminder, the Trans Mountain Northeast project the construction cost is about $54 million, of which the RMA is providing about $2.4 million for the aesthetic improvements that were requested by the City of El Paso. This work authorization provides a not-to-exceed amount to the general engineering consultant of about $129,000, and the estimated completion date for the project is July of 2014.
Where's the rest of our commitment, you said was 2.4 mil towards this project. This is only 1.29. Where's the rest of it coming from?
No, the 129,000 is our portion that we're providing to the GEC to provide the oversight services.
Right.
The 2.4 million is the amount that we took out a state infrastructure bank loan and then provided to TxDOT for them to complete it.
Okay.
Included within that loan is 129,000 for the general engineering consultant.
Okay. Anything else? Any comments, questions? No?
I guess, I hear that this includes the aesthetic improvement. Do all projects include aesthetic improvement? Because this one clearly does, but
This one was very unique. I think that the City of El Paso, as you know, the city has hired an artist to evaluate the I-10 corridor and has been recently, within the last couple of years, very interested in the aesthetic improvements that TxDOT has been adding to its facilities throughout the city. The city had discussed with TxDOT the addition of additional aesthetic improvements above and beyond what TxDOT normally would do for a facility. And really what this comes down to is that TxDOT had developed the project, had put the design out, and had hired a construction contractor. At that time, the city asked if they would include additional aesthetics through the use of the city's artist. And TxDOT said, look, we've already issued this and we're ready to go. The city said, the city essentially felt very strongly that those additional aesthetics should be added, so the city is paying for it. So it's above and beyond the normal aesthetic improvements that go into a TxDOT project.
because one of the things that we heard clearly yesterday at the I-10 aesthetics final vote with City Council to move forward on the Airways pilot project is that it's better to include the aesthetic component as these projects are being built rather than after the fact. So it would be a great idea for us as an RMA to have that as something that we enforce. Maybe that's too strong of a word, but that we want an aesthetic component included in everything that we build.
And I think that dialogue has been happening with TxDOT, and I think that they're receptive to it.
Any further discussion?
Great.
Hear a motion entertained to approve action item number 7 as posted.
So moved.
Need a second?
Second?
Second by Rosario. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Done. Thank you. Carries. Item number 8, discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the executive director to execute the following instruments as they relate to the development of the westbound to southbound direct connector as part of the I-10 at Loop 375 America's Interchange. The first one, A, project development agreement with Texas Department of Transportation, and B, work authorization number 12 with Atkins North America, Inc. as the CRRMA's general engineering consultant. Raymond.
So by way of background, I want to remind you, when the Americas Interchange project was first taken over by the RMA, the original project included 4 direct connectors. That when the initial bids came in for the design build agreement, the bids were over the project budget. So we ended up having to remove a 4th direct connector. The 4th one that we removed was the westbound to southbound. The reason we removed that one was that it was the most expensive direct connector. And then you'll recall, so we ended up signing the agreement with the Americas Gateway Builders for 3 direct connectors. And then over time, Proposition 12 funds became available, and the MPO allocated those for the completion of a 4th direct connector, which was the westbound to northbound direct connector. And as you know, the RMA has agreed to provide the design work for that westbound to northbound direct connector. We'll provide that design work to TxDOT, and TxDOT will let that project in August of 2012. What you see before you now is westbound to southbound, which will essentially amount to the 5th direct connector that we're adding to the project. In this instance, TxDOT has also found additional funds whereby the RMA is being requested to provide the design work for the westbound to southbound, and we're doing it on an expedited timeline, and so that we can complete the design work by August of 2012. So at least the goal is to have the westbound to northbound be let along with the westbound to southbound, so that once January 2013 comes along and the Americas Gateway Builders achieve substantial completion, hopefully TxDOT will have on board a construction contractor to build 2 more additional direct connectors.
When's the letting for this?
The goal is August of 2012 to meet the letting for the westbound to northbound. Very tight timeline, but we think that we can make it.
Okay. Any comments, questions? No? All right.
So
We'll
what
entertain
you
a-
see, actually, and I should clarify, so what you see before you then, item 8A is the authorization for the execution of the project development agreement between the Regional Mobility Authority and TxDOT, which gives us the authority to complete the design work for the project for this westbound to southbound, and provides us the funding to do so. What you see as item 8B then is the work authorization number 12 with our general engineering consultant to actually complete the design work.
And that's for $1,949,481.
Yes, that's correct. $1.9 million.
Okay. All right. I'll entertain a motion to accept to take action on item number 8 as posted on the agenda.
Move to accept.
Second?
Second?
Second. Okay. Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Done. Thank you. Number 9. Discussion and action on board resolutions authorizing the executive director to execute the following instruments as they relate to the development of the Schuster Connection Project. A, project development agreement with TxDOT, and B, work authorization number 13 with Atkins North America as the CRRMA's general engineering consultant. How come we don't have any pictures today?
This one, well, we do. And in fact, actually, I'm going to ask Mr. Mike Rudd to join us at the podium.
Will he have pictures?
Yes. So this project's a little bit different. This one, I'm asking Mr. Rudd to provide some details for us, because with this one, we haven't really discussed much at the board level. The one backup diagram that I provided was from last month when TxDOT provided a presentation to us related to the Border Highway West project. Specifically, the Schuster connection was included within that presentation. and Mr. Rudd is going to provide some additional details on what the project is and what we're looking to do with it.
Have you seen this picture? It's a very busy picture.
Yes, it is. But Mr. Rudd's going to make it very clear for us.
When he comes up here. Good morning. My name is Mike Rudd with the Camino Real RMA GEC. It is kind of a busy picture, but again, this is a portion of the schematic, 30% schematic, I may say, that TxDOT is working on. And so we just took and clipped the layout portion of the schematic so we could present this. But basically, as you see, this is the Schuster Extension Project, or Spur 1966. It comes off the UTEP at the parking garage off of Schuster. A roundabout will be created. A 1,200-foot bridge will be constructed over I-10, the railroad, and ties in at an elevated T to Paisano or US 85. And then obviously Paisano will have to be elevated also. And so we'll come up, we'll create a 2,300-foot bridge that will elevate Paisano to meet 1966 at the point. It's about 35 to 40-foot elevation. We're looking at 2 lanes in both directions on the spur with a turn lane. Let's see if I can. Not going to let me. Try to zoom in, but can you see that the arrow there? I'm trying to see if that shows up. Does it show up? Or the hand? Right here, this is where the future border highway ties in, and those dedicated turn lanes are based on being able to turn into the ramps that are going to come off the future border highway. One of the things that we'll also do is the existing Yandell Bridge is basically profile is in the way of the future border highway, so that will have to come down. But part of the Yandell is a pedestrian walkway, and it's been proposed to build a separate pedestrian structure to handle the foot traffic that comes from the south area. Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, it makes it a little easier to see. The limits are basically going to be from Ruland Court up on the north side into about 1,200 foot south on Paisano. Again, this is a 30% schematic. There's still some things that are being discussed as far as the type of structures that are going to be out here, whether or not there will be a pedestrian facility on the bridges crossing I-10 and the railroad, and also on Paisano. But again, those are things that will be worked out through continued design. One of the things that we've talked about doing and will be doing, and I think Raymond will be presenting this, is breaking the design into 2 phases, just because we are not 100% sure what will be designed. And so our first phase is going to be basically being able to meet with TxDOT and their consultant to discuss and have input into the type of facilities that are going to be built, the alignment, and some of the other items, including the aesthetics component. And then the phase 2 will be after the schematic is substantially complete and the alignment is set. We'll actually develop a design work authorization to bring to the board.
And if I understand correctly, this is going to be let in January of 13?
The intended letting is no later than January 2013. That's it.
And we're going to do all this in the next, 9 months?
That is correct, yes, sir.
Are you dealing with TxDOT in any of this? 'Cause it ain't going to happen if you do.
No, and Eduardo will come up here, but they have been very good. They've been sitting on their hands and wanted to make sure that we get through. But no, they've been very helpful.
Really?
You have something to
Mr.
say?
Calvo, talk to us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Eduardo Calvo with TxDOT here. No, one thing I wanted to say, first of all, thank you all for working together with us. Just a general comment in terms of what you all saw in the prior item, getting the west to south direct connector ready, so that, we get it designed. What really has been happening in the last 2 to 3 years, or maybe a little more, funding for construction projects for the big ticket items really has been moving from a formula based, where we had a pretty good idea how much money was going to be available each year, so we were able to plan our projects that way. What we're moving towards now is for funding opportunities coming in spurts. We saw that, for example, with the ARRA, with the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, where all of a sudden a lot of money becomes available, and whoever has projects ready to go are the big winners. So we saw the same thing again with the state funds, with Proposition 12, version 1 and version 2. So all of a sudden, a big chunk of money becomes available, and the question is, who's got project ready? I mean, the regions that have the bigger and the better projects shovel ready to go are in a much better opportunity to get them funded. So we are doing this. That's why you see a lot of accelerated schedules in much of the projects that we're developing right now. Part of the strategy as a region is partnering up, TxDOT partnering up with the RMA, and being able to get these designed quicker. We believe that this is a much quicker way of getting these projects shovel ready and ready to compete for funding when funding becomes available than TxDOT doing it the traditional way, going out and hiring a consultant, which, as you well know, takes a long time. And so we're very excited about the opportunity to partner on these projects.
Okay.
And with that, if I could expand, I think that this project is a perfect example of that. You've got the environmental and the schematic processes that are ongoing, yet we're hiring our engineers to begin the design process. So, and that's why you hear Mr. Rudd allude to the fact that we're actually doing this in 2 work authorizations. So this first work authorization that we're requesting of you all today is to is to get access to funds so that Mr. Rudd can get out there and begin the preliminary engineering work. Once the environmental and the schematic processes move a little bit further, and we've narrowed down what the actual work will be, then I'll be back to you with a second work authorization for the actual design work. So you'll see we'll be back for another item on this before too long.
Okay. Now, this work authorization number 13 is for $317,713. Where's that money coming from?
Well, under item 9A, you have the project development agreement with TxDOT, and that agreement provides the funding for us to pursue this project.
All right, good. And then I assume we'll go to work authorization number 14 or whatever for the design, correct?
Yes.
Is that money also coming from TxDOT?
It is, and it's within the existing project development agreement. Normally, like as you saw in item 8A and B, you have one project development agreement with the total amount that's available to the RMA. Then you have item 8B, from which the work authorization identifies all the funds that the general engineering consultant needs to get the work done. In this item, it's a little bit different because we don't know exactly 100% what the design work will be that will be needed. Right. So we're having to do one project development agreement with all the funds available, and then one work authorization for preliminary to get us to that final part, and then a second work authorization will follow.
And the design will be done by TxDOT?
No, the design is being done by us, by the RMA through its GEC, and then we will provide the design work over to TxDOT so that they can let it in January of 2013 at the latest.
And the reason I'm asking is because we're going to segue into item number 10.
That's right.
Okay, which I know has been a point of contention with our local engineering firm. So I just want to make sure we're clear as to why we're doing things and put it in perspective so that at least we can defend our position going forward.
And that's a good point. The fact is, these funds, just as item A and B, these funds are tied to extremely tight timelines. So the best way that we've come up with to deal with item number 10, which is the use of local resources, is to do the vendor fair, which is already scheduled. We've got everything set up so that our general engineering consultant can reach out to the local resources and bring them on board as necessary for situations like this where we need to provide design work extremely fast.
Yes, sir.
Real quick, what's the exact distance from the UTEP roundabout to the Paisano? What's that extension?
That's about 1,300 feet, 12 to 1,300 feet.
From UTEP all the way down to Paisano?
That's correct.
Okay.
It looks longer, doesn't it?
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, do I hear a motion to take action as presented in agenda item number 9? Need a motion? Second? Second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, done. Thank you. Item number 10. Presentation, discussion, and action on a report from the CRRMA's General Engineering Consultant Team on its use of local resources. Raymond?
So as we alluded to in the last item, the RMA board last month directed our general engineering consultant to do two things. The first was to develop a vendor fair to identify and become familiarized with, or familiarize themselves with our local resources in terms of local engineering firms and the like. That vendor fair, and we have Mr. Pete Jacobs from our general engineering consultant team here to provide the presentation, and Mr. Jacobs will speak a little bit about the vendor fair that's already scheduled through the assistance of the Chamber of Commerce here in town. The second item that this board requested was a breakdown of all of the revenue generated by the general engineering consultant from the RMA, and a breakdown in terms of local resources. So the question that came from the board was, of every dollar that we're providing to you, how much of that is going to the local resources? So with that as the backdrop, I'll ask Mr. Jacobs to provide the report to you. And I should mention also, this report is from the beginning of our general engineering consultant agreement through January. Is it January? January of this year. And then from here forward, on a quarterly basis, we'll be providing these updates.
Thank you. For the record, my name is Pete Jacobs with the CRRMA General Engineering Consultant. There we go. It's a big word.
Let me mention one thing also. Mr. Jacobs has additional copies for the public, which should be on the podium. What we have before you is a summary sheet which breaks down the GEC services and the payments by firm. So, and I believe actually we have it. There it is on the
On the overhead, yes. And just to follow back up, this is up to date from the very beginning, showing the firms that have worked on this project in the multiple of our different work authorizations. What we're presenting here is the local and non-local, for total labor. What that is local resources. We've broken it down to where it is based on who lives and works within El Paso and who doesn't work and live within El Paso. This is not based on who is headquartered here, it's just based on who is the local employees. To date, we've had approximately 66 local employees working on these various different work authorizations. The amount of money to date, as you can see, is a billing rate, and then we have the expenses off to the side. So you can see by column the percentage of the total for each company. For instance, taking Atkins, we have 43% of our total billing to date has been by local resources. And that's true for all the other firms down there. You'll see we also have for non-local. And the expenses, we didn't break those out any more than what they're showing, just this is the direct expenses. We didn't break down where those are spent. Any questions? It's pretty straightforward. You can see from the list of the far right who by company has received what percentage of the total billing rates or of the amount earned to date by company. So of the $7 million, that is based on the percentage of that $7 million spent to date.
Okay. On the local numbers for Atkins, the 1,000,004, is that a fully loaded number?
Yes, sir, it is.
Okay.
It is.
Okay.
Now,
And by local employees, you mean they live here?
Yes, sir.
They have
They all
residence
live
here versus non-local, which I assume fly in as needed or live
Yes.
elsewhere?
Exactly, sir.
Okay.
And to pick up on that point, actually, really, when you look at this table, you're really seeing two different ways of looking at the same figures. When you look at the last column, the total billing, if you're interested in finding out exactly how much Atkins earned, the final column shows you they earned $3.4 million. AIA, Brock & Bustillo's, ECM, et cetera, they're all broken out there. So that tells you the exact amount that the firm has earned through January of 2012. But the question that was presented, or the request that was presented from the RMA board to the GEC was identify the local resources. So that's why you see the breakout of local and non-local. So really, again, what you see in the first two columns is of the Atkins team, those folks that live here, that are employed by Atkins, that have a home here, that are paying taxes, that are contributing to the local economy, those are the folks that are identified under the local column. The non-local are the individuals that are providing services out of Austin, by way of example. So, for example, regional toll plan work authorization number 2, that task was to provide us significant research related to our toll projects. That ability really isn't available here locally because there aren't tolling firms here. So the majority of the regional toll plan funds have been spent by or were paid to non-local employees. So that's how this was really developed.
The second sheet, which is a summary sheet that it's in your packets, is broken up by work authorization. And that does help explain a little bit how and why the billing went to non-local or to local resources. And again, that is total amount there, not by company.
And the 66 local employees transfer over to the second sheet where you have your by work authorizations?
Yes, sir. They're all the same numbers.
So those 66 employees remain constant?
Yes, sir. They're all all these numbers are just shown, they all equal the same amount. There's just different ways of presenting them.
So Raymond, you're saying that you were talking about Cesar Chavez and we had to go outside of El Paso because there were no firms that could manage the managed tolls.
The regional toll plan, because the point of that task was to map out how to pursue the toll project, how to phase it, and specifically looking at, for example, the market valuation rate, the market valuation process, and all of those toll-specific activities could only be done by a firm outside of El Paso.
Right. Can we go through each individual project? I know it's 10 o'clock. But what about Loop 375 Zaragoza? What about the next page? How are we going to reach out?
That one will be done mainly locally
Mainly locally.
because it's mainly doing construction.
Okay. What about the task assignments? I guess that will be done locally as well.
Most of everything that's been approved will be done locally
Okay.
Recently. That's correct.
And I believe the intent of the vendor fair is to reach out to the local talent, if you will, that's not currently on your team,
That is exactly correct.
right? So
Yes,
that
sir.
we can expand the pool.
Yes, sir. By our contract, we are allowed to expand on our contract, and as we need resources, we will definitely be going to see them.
So really, the managed tolls is the only project where we'll have to really go outside of El Paso because of the,
On this
Well,
project, yes.
specialty,
There could be
right.
others that.
Right.
that tell us.
The only reason I bring that one up is that one is either at 100% or close to 100% completed by non-locals, and that's why that one is really kind of an anomaly and needed to be explained, I think.
yeah. And obviously, the aesthetics, the I-10 aesthetics will be local.
Yes.
Except for the lady that designed it.
Yeah, except for Victoria.
Yeah.
She's using El Paso artists. Well, I'd like to hear from some of the local engineers who are here who spoke at the last meeting, who wanted this issue raised and how they
And if I
feel
could-
about this report.
If I could make one final point before we move to the public comment, this is an important breakdown, but what it's doing is only breaking down the expenditures made for our general engineering consultants. This does not look at the actual construction work and the construction expenses to date. So that's a whole nother realm, and we can certainly look into that. But the issue that has been raised to date is the use of our GEC and their use of local resources. So that's what this is. So when you talk about percentage of expenditures for the construction of the Spur project, which obviously was managed by TxDOT, but when you look at the Americas Interchange project, those numbers are looking very favorable for use of local resources as well. But I note that as an aside.
And wouldn't that also be in our annual report?
We don't break that into local and non-local in our annual report, no.
We can going forward if it's of consequence, but
Yeah.
up to now it
I think it's
hasn't. But
important to say.
we can
how
look
much
at it.
spending local.
Absolutely, we can do that.
It's too late for this year, but we can definitely bring it up next year, maybe.
You know, two things, though. It also doesn't include administrative. Good examples are current audit, which is being done from an Albuquerque firm. And we talked about this, you know, and you know, it's, what we need as a board, I think, is a reason why we're doing this. We spent 45% of this money on non-local people. And that's fine. If we can say to people, the reason we did it is because of this, that's what's important. I think if we don't know why we're doing it as a board, and both in this as well as all of our administrative costs, and I think it catches us unawares, and it probably is not good for the RMA on a public relations standpoint. So I think maybe going forward, we probably should have something in place that if we're using non-local people, whether it's engineers, whether it's construction, whether it's an accounting firm, we need to be able to say why.
And this is just the GEC. It does not, for instance, the accounting
And
firm.
I understand
Right,
that.
I mean, you're only looking $7 million, okay? So it's a very small picture of what we're actually spending out there, so.
But, and on the Americas project, we're 82% local. Local resources.
But it brings forward a good point, you know, and we keep having this discussion over and over again, and it's something that's important to all of us, I think. So I think it's, you
All
know,
right.
thank you.
Joe, you want to?
Thank you, Pete.
Good morning, members of the board.
Morning.
Mr. Acting Chair, good morning. Freeman.
Your name, Joe, your name, please?
Joe Cardenas for the record, and I am president of Moreno Cardenas Engineering Company and also a member of the El Paso chapter of ACEC, the American Council of Engineering Companies. As far as the spreadsheet that we got a copy this morning, I guess really it's the definition on that first column of what truly is a local firm. I have my definition. Certainly it's different from Atkins's definition. I think the local firms, the firms that are represented, the majority of the ACEC firms are firms in the El Paso chapter that have been in El Paso for a length of time to show that they're truly represent a local engineering presence. I do not see how Atkins can say that $1.4 million has been generated by local resources. In our industry, it's a standard around the country that an engineering company will pull in $100,000 in revenues per employee. So using that criteria, they should have somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 to 14 employees in El Paso. I just heard they had 5 or 6. Jacobs, here in the local column, says $884,000. That means that they should have approximately 8 to 9 employees in El Paso. I'm not even sure Jacobs has, do we know how many employees Jacobs? They have 1 employee in El Paso. So it's that type of rule of thumb, and it's a standard within our industry, anywhere from 100 to 150,000 revenue per employee, that I guess I question that first column. That's my comment on this table.
If I could speak to that, I think that the way that these figures were developed was looking at the audited rates that have been approved for the firms. And Mr. Jacobs, if you could come up and speak a little bit to that. So we didn't use a rule of thumb. We looked at the actual expenses made as they tie specifically to the audited rates that were approved by this board.
No, and it's based on 3 years. We've been here on this contract for 3 years, and a significant amount of money was spent in the first 2 years. I concur with what Mrs. Cardenas is saying, and that when you put these 14 employees together, it's actually low, because we've had 5 employees as a minimum on site for 5 years, or for 3 years of this contract. So, but I concur with what he's saying.
And if you recall, in the front end of this contract, there was not a lot of work. There was a lot of waiting for contracts to be set. So there wasn't the incentive by the general engineering consultant. In fact, there was quite a period where they were waiting to send people to El Paso, but we didn't have the work. So that work was being done in Austin. I mean, there are reasons for it that do not fit into a rule of thumb.
Okay. Well, at least, thank you. It gives us a gauge, if you will, to look at this and going forward, right? It gives us a target to see if we can get there, for whatever reasons. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Mike Pink. I'm with Park Hill Smith & Cooper. I'm one of the owners of Park Hill Smith & Cooper. I'm also a member of the ACEC, the El Paso chapter, and on the board of directors with the ACEC. As a member of the El Paso chapter of ACEC, we've got a lot of concern about this. You know, as work for local consultants. We were kind of understanding is that the GEC's primary job was administration and management and planning, and that design type things would go out, and we really wanted to be able to compete for that and put people to work. As a company owner, I've got an investment in employees, and we just had to lay off 6 employees in El Paso. So, you know, that hits home. One of them was a transportation engineer. So, we would want to compete for work and be involved in the work that's in El Paso. Our companies were very, very involved in helping getting the CRRMA going, and we'd like to see something come back from more of the El Paso firms. And by El Paso firms, I think someone said live, own homes, and pay taxes, which I think Joe last time, when he talked about the history of engineering firms in El Paso, you know, that's what we are. I mean, we live, own homes, and pay taxes here, all our employees. And some of us have been here for 50, 60 years. So,
Okay.
thank you.
Good evening. My name is Jose Rodarte, and I'm the Vice President, Office Manager, and Shareholder of Hewitt Sollers. You know, we're what I call a local office with national resources. We've been here in El Paso for the last 19 years. And I'm a UTEP graduate. All of our company, probably they're all UTEP graduates and here in El Paso. But, you know, I want to take a little bit of a different twist. I'm a former TxDOT employee. I was the Director of Design for the El Paso District. I don't think there is a project that TxDOT has developed that I'm not aware, that has not been on the books for a long time. And also, I was, at one time, I was the Assistant Director of Transportation Planning and Development. And like Mr. Calvo, I was very, very involved in programming projects, so I know how critical funding it is to develop projects. And the RMA, in my opinion, has been a savior and to move projects ahead, in which TxDOT, on the way they do projects, is a slower process. Now, I know a lot of times here with on the RMA, you know, the interchange that's being developed, it was an opportunity, short fuse, and I think the GC has done a great job in doing the work. Now, what I want to do is as this last project got approved, this connection for Schuster, I want to offer the board the opportunity when something like this comes out. This project, you know, being a transportation engineer, I know how long it takes to develop a project. I know the issues that this project is going to have with the railroad agreements, with environmental, and right now it's at 30% schematic stage. I know because of the funding constraint, perhaps it needs to be led pretty quick. And yes, if the answer for the RMA to pick up the project and do it through their GEC, I think it's an answer. However, to me, that's also an opportunity for the board, for the RMA, to offer or to direct the GEC as an opportunity to say, okay, this is a project that perhaps, you know, we can issue an RFQ and go out for consultants, because one thing that the RMA has, and it will have a quicker process to select a consultant that TxDOT has. You know, I do agree with Mr. Calvo, the process with TxDOT is very cumbersome and it takes a long time. But I believe that with the RMA, with the tools that it has, and with the knowledge that GGEC has in managing consultants and in doing negotiations, and perhaps they can go ahead and go through the process and select a consultant, and give opportunities for other teams to come in and help, and projects here in El Paso. So my twist is a little bit different, but I just want to offer those type of opportunities that in the future might come out. Like I thought this one, and I hope this project, this connection, gets led in January of next year. If it does, for sure my hat's off to the RMA, to the GC, and to the TxDOT for being so proactive. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I agree again with all the comments being said. That's why our vendor fair is next Wednesday, the 21st at 5 o'clock. It's going to be at the Chamber of Commerce, and our intention is to gather as much information about the local firms, what capabilities are out there, who has what capabilities. We understand exactly what's going on in the sense of we have a limited staff with our companies and our firms, and we are going to have to expand to make these to make some of these deadlines. And by using local firms, being able to grab the firm that has the capability of doing bridge design and something else can pick us up, we can do that very, very quickly. So that is our goal. By the way, Atkins is also a CEC member of the local chapter. Just wanted to bring that up.
Thank you.
So if you have any, and I do have to say one thing, our Jacobs representative is a UTEP graduate also, but we don't hold that against him. But it's.
I really appreciate your report.
Hold on, let me,
go
got a
ahead.
few more.
Go ahead.
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize you could.
Well, they changed their mind.
Good morning, John Cordova with Robert Kistner Consultants here in El Paso. I'm a vice president, a UTEP graduate. We're also a member firm of ACEC here in El Paso, and I guess I want to congratulate everybody here, the Atkins teams. I know since the last meeting, our firm has now started to benefit from the construction phase at Americas. We're a sub to a sub, so we appreciate that. And I also want to encourage the openness, the continuation of the movement to use these very well-qualified firms. Moreno Cardenas, Park Hill, Smith & Cooper, these guys can do the job. CEA Group, everybody in ACEC has a long-term involvement in El Paso. They live here, and I truly believe they can do anything that anybody else can do out of town. So,
Again, AC is.
the American Council of Engineering Companies.
Thank you.
So, thank you very much.
Cardenas?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick point on this vendor fair. We haven't gotten any details, and at the January meeting, we understood that with Richard Dayub and ACEC, we would be coordinating kind of the schedule. So it's news to us that it's Wednesday. But one thing I need to point out, I'm not sure the details, again, since we haven't been told, but the RMA has to be careful. Again, these are professional services, and professional services by law have to be procured through the QBS process, a qualifications-based selection. I don't know the intent, but if the intent is to present our qualifications to the GEC, who is going to make the determination as to which firm is qualified at that point? The way the PSPA is written, Professional Service Procurement Act, the governmental entity, in this case the RMA, must be the one making that decision. What I hope you don't do is transfer that decision-making authority to your GEC, which is in essence a private company.
Okay, thank you. Raymond, you want to address that?
We've asked our attorneys to look at it to make sure that we are complying with all laws, including the Professional Services Procurement Act. I'll ask them to review it again. We've been made to feel comfortable with this approach, so I'll spend some time to make sure that we're 100%.
Right. Well, just to address Ms. Cardenas, whatever the GEC does, will come forward to the RMA, no? It's either as an FYI or as an action item. So they're not just going to arbitrarily go and do their own thing without, because remember the original bid, they put together a team and they were asked to select local talent, if you will, to be part of that team, and we were made cognizant of that team, correct? And I assume going forward, any additions to your team, which is what we're looking for, correct?
Correct.
Will be brought forward to the RMA for either consideration or action, correct?
Yes.
Okay, because remember, what the intent here was, and the chair has been very, and he's not here, so I'll speak for him, but the chair has been working through Raymond, has been very adamant in working with the chamber, and we've met with the chamber and representatives from the chairman of the commission, is to try and be as fair and leave as much of the local dollars here. And I got to commend Atkins because they've been open to it. They could have said, no, we have a team in place already. We have to be fair to our team, and that's what we're going to go with. But because of the procurement expediency that we've had to go through, we haven't had the time or the opportunity to go through the normal procurement process of putting things out for bid, bringing the bids back, going through the evaluation process, which is tedious and time-consuming. So these deadlines that have been imposed on us have forced us to kind of get creative, if you will, and we're trying to get creative within the legal parameters that we're obligated to adhere to. So, you know, I think we're being very creative in a way, but at the same time, I think we're going to achieve our goal, which is to try and leave as many of these dollars here locally where we can.
That is our goal. We have since, in the last meeting, you approved an addition to our team. CQC was added to the team, which is a local geotechnical firm, which Robert Kistner is also working with.
Okay.
So we have been adding them as we need them.
Okay. But I think by the next meeting, Raymond, if you can bring us to see what we can and cannot do legally.
Absolutely.
And before we basically transition our authority to our GEC, if it's possible or not.
Absolutely.
And maybe you can make us aware of what's coming down as far as additions to your team. That would help.
Absolutely, we will do that.
Okay. Comments?
I think we need to, obviously our chair isn't here, you're doing a wonderful job, Ralph, but I think we need to wait for our chair to come back and maybe have a meeting of the board, because I think we need to consider waiting, having local resources have a stronger weight in our selection process, at least consider that. I would also like to see the total dollars that we spend locally, so I think that's something that we definitely need to publicize in our annual report. Pete, thank you very much for this report. I think it's a starting point, but there is still a disconnect. There are obviously wonderful local firms working on these projects, more coming online, but I think we need to do more.
And we're trying.
We're starting, but
we can't go back and start the process, as you heard.
Right.
We have to let this by January. There's a lot that's going to take place. In the future, other projects.
I'm talking about the future.
Right. In the future, yeah, we've opened to that. In fact, Jacob doesn't necessarily, Atkins is not going to necessarily be our general consulting engineer forever. It's conceivable at some point we could have somebody else, correct?
That is correct.
That is the nature of the game, just like we switched auditors but for now, this is our team, and because, again, the expedited procurement process and letting timelines, we have to do what we have to do within this context. So, okay, but no, we are cognizant of that, and hopefully we can improve on it.
Right. And one final note on the vendor fair. Our understanding was that the Chamber of Commerce was going to provide those details to the Chamber members. I'd asked Mr. Cardenas if he could get with Pete Jacobs here after the meeting so that they can discuss the details, and Mr. Cardenas can share those details with his professional organizations. I understood that information was already shared, so I apologize if it was not.
Who have you worked with at the Chamber? Right?
I'm going to, drawing a blank right Ms. Butler.
Jackie Butler. Out of the Government Relations Division.
Okay.
Maybe Mr. Cardenas can circle. Joe, maybe you can circle back with that individual and see what the status is.
Well, and we need to do that as well. So Mr. Jacobs today will contact the local engineering communities, the CEC, the TSPE.
Right.
Pete will speak with each of them personally to make sure that they understand what's coming and when.
Right, but since the Chamber came before us, I want to task them to keeping up their part of the bargain, which was to help facilitate this.
Certainly.
Okay? So it works both ways.
Certainly.
Yes, and it's,
All right, anything else from Mr. Jacobs? All right, very good.
thank you.
Any action item needs to be taken on this that I know? Okay, great. All right, item number 11, discussion and action on the Executive Director's Report, A, the I-10 Corridor Aesthetics Improvement Project Update, and the 2012 Texas Transportation Forum.
Item 11A deals with the aesthetic project, and actually I would ask Ms. Holguin, I didn't preface this, I should have mentioned it to you, but as you were an attendee yesterday and the representative for the RMA board, if you could speak a little bit about what happened at yesterday's special council meeting. The city council met yesterday to discuss specifically the aesthetic project for I-10.
They've met and they voted to start with the airport corridor for the aesthetic project and then move to the downtown corridor. It's a $10 million project. Part of the reason to start with the airport, not only is it because it's such a visible corridor, but because they had some additional monies from Keep El Paso Beautiful. So we're talking about improvements in the with regional plants and lighting and improving of pedestrian walkways and really enhancing the aesthetics of the entrance to El Paso. What else can I say?
Well, and I'll pick up off of there. As you know, the RMA has already executed a project development agreement with TxDOT that provides us the $10 million that are the total available project funds for this project. What's happening now is that the artist, which is employed by the city of El Paso, is now negotiating a new agreement with the city that would provide her the funds and the direction to do the oversight of the design and construction work. Our engineer is working with their artist to make sure that as our engineer prepares their proposed scope of work, it dovetails into what she's providing. So at some point in the near future, we should have a work authorization that I bring forward to you that would task our general engineering consultant with the design work related to the aesthetic improvements, as well as the procurement of a construction team and the oversight of the construction for the work as well. So we'll have that to you hopefully next month.
Okay. Anything else on A? As far as B, I guess, I attended along with the chairman at the conference was in San Antonio this year. I would encourage next year to get, maybe I'll be willing to give up my seat if someone else wants to go. It is a very worthwhile conference. We got to meet the new executive director for TxDOT and actually got to chat with him a little bit. We also met some of our colleagues. We had a very interesting dinner with the North Texas Tollway Authority. I think they've got, they're talking about $9 billion, okay? And so it was interesting, gives us something to shoot for by next year maybe, Raymond?
Right. Absolutely.
So anyway, that's pretty much it, because I know we're running late. Raymond, any comments on our conference? Or
no, I thought it was an excellent conference, and we had, you know, the beauty of those conferences is that everybody that's involved in transportation is there. So there's a lot of activity in the hallways getting projects finalized and working out the details. So it was, again, a very useful conference, and I recommend it highly to anyone who's interested for next year. So subject to your...
went 4 years ago and spoke at that conference and also recommended, but I think if somebody else wants to go again next year, that would be great. It's a great idea.
Generally, it's held in February every year, different parts. Generally, it's been in Austin. This is the first time it's moved out of Austin.
Right, and it moved from January to February, so we'll see what happens next year. But I'll provide you advance notice.
We got time. All right. Anything else for the good of the cause? Raymond?
Yes, sir.
We'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
Second. Second. Any further comments? Hearing none. Well, I've got approximately 10:25, Raymond. Is that correct? My angle might be off.
That's correct.
All right. And so move to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Oppose? Done. Thank you. We stand adjourned.